Paul, Jude, John, Jesus, Peter are referring to texts and prophecies they all knew and we don't have.
Why were these things altered? What's happening? Why were these things taken out?
So
what's your best guess?
So that's kind of what. So a lot of people have done great work on the Apocrypha before. Hugh Nibley is a giant.
Yeah, he's amazing.
In no way I don't want to ever be compared to Hugh Nibley. Like Hugh Nibley's amazing, the work that he's done. But I think what's unique about my book is that it synthesizes it all into a theory as to how and why this happened, and explains not just like, hey, these ideas pop up in other places, like, well, that's amazing, but like a story, like here's how this idea got from here to here, and here's how the Apocrypha, pops up in the Book of Mormon and things like that. And the theory in a nutshell, which is not unique to my book, is that talk of the Messiah was really tough for people to hear. And this sounds strange to Christians.
Yeah,
why would you want to talk about the Messiah? Imagine if someone in your congregation stood up and they said, I discovered this text. It's in the back of the Bible. Who knew? No one had read it. The pages were stuck together. Hey, I peeled it open and look what I found. It's the book of Schnabadoo, and it says, you in this congregation are going to murder God. Do you think that'd go down real well?
Yeah.
Right? People would be like, what? They'd flip out. The prophecies about the Messiah who had not yet come were prophesying that wicked priests, lawless men, the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Lehi, that these guys would murder the Son of God. He would come down in the flesh to save us, and you're going to kill him. That's you couldn't design a less attractive prophecy to give, right?
It'd be really hard to teach in your synagogue.
Yeah.
So we're going to kill Messiah.
That's right. Okay, everybody on the same page here? When
he comes here, we're going to reject him. We're going to, spit upon him, and then we'll kill him.
Right. And so it isn't just the niceties of, do we recognize Jesus? How come they didn't recognize Jesus? It's like there was a very real, a personal, the Testament of Lehi is a great example, one of those from that same corpus of Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, where he says to his own children, he says, you, because they're going to become the priestly class, you Levites, you, my children someday, are going to kill God. You are going to murder the Son of God. He's going to come down and you're going to raise him up on a tree and crucify him, right? Now that's way too specific for the academics. They throw that out. But who else would want to throw that out? The Levites would want to throw that out. The Deuteronomists, the reformers, the last editor of the Bible. You're in charge. You're interning, okay, at the University of Jerusalem, okay, and it's 500 BC, and you have to come up with you're putting together the texts, and they say, hey, review some of these and see what should be included, and you pull one out that says your boss is going to murder the Messiah, and you're like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like, do you say, supervisor, this says you're going to, no, you're like,
destroy.
You either destroy it or you say, this is a hoax. It's a fraud. Get rid of it. Or you risk having yourself, your wife, and all your children killed or exiled. And so the reason that these things were taken out is because they were politically, personally volatile, dangerous prophecies to have in there. They weren't just a different take on a nice messianic prophecy. These things got you killed.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the apocryphal texts that that I review in the book show prophets being killed for exactly that. Lehi in 1 Nephi chapter 1 says, you're going to kill me for preaching the Messiah just like you killed other prophets for preaching the Messiah. What other prophets?
Yeah.
Who's he talking about?
Wait, where does he say that at?
1 Nephi chapter 1, verse 19 and 20.
Let's whip it out.
You'll notice that when Lehi's giving this sermon in Jerusalem, he says, Babylon's going to come. I'll have you read it, actually. You want to read it?
So 19 and 20. It says, then it came to pass that the Jews did mock him being Lehi, because of the things which he testified of them. For he truly testified of their wickedness and their abominations.
Okay, so pause right there. So he says, you're wicked, you're abominations. And what do? Oh, Lehi, you're so silly. They mock him.
Yeah.
They just laugh at him. Okay, keep going.
And he testified that the things which he saw and heard, and also the things which he read in the book, manifested plainly of the coming of a Messiah and also the redemption of the world.
And what's the next line?
And when the Jews heard these things, they were angry with him, yea, even as with the prophets of old, whom they had cast out and stoned and slain, and they also sought his life that they might take it away. But behold, I, Nephi.
Okay, so all right, so he says, you're all wicked.
Yea.
You're going to be destroyed. And they go, I'll get out of here. And then he mentions the Messiah. And the moment that word leaves his lips, they start picking up stones to kill him. Mm-hmm. And he says, you're going to kill me for preaching the Messiah, just like you stoned, cast out, and slayed those other prophets. Mm-hmm. And you ask, Lehi, what are you talking about, dude? First of all, what other prophets in the Old Testament preached about the Messiah?
Yeah.
Can anybody name prophets of old before 600 BC who preached the Messiah?
Explicitly, not like in the Book of Mormon.
No, they didn't. Jews read all those, Isaiah chapter 2, Deuteronomy 18. Jews read all those verses just like we do. And they say, guys, you're squinting. Yeah. You're straining to make this about Jesus. This isn't about Jesus, okay?
Yeah.
So Lehi's saying they're teaching about the Messiah. You're going to kill me just like you killed them, stoned them, cast them out, slain, exiled them. And you think, who was killed or exiled? What are you talking about, man?
The Messiah is only mentioned twice in the whole Old Testament in Daniel chapter 9, right?
Interesting, because you talked about the Masoretes. Mm-hmm. Actually, that verse in Daniel does not talk about the Messiah. It talks about a Messiah.
A Messiah.
Yeah, that's coming in later.
A whole different thing.
Yeah.
So one thing I will point out, though, because a critic would just look at what you just shared, what Lehi said, is just like, well, yeah, Joseph Smith's writing Lehi saying that the prophets were stoned because of the Messiah and all this sort of stuff, but we don't find that. But then you go to Matthew chapter 23, verse 37,
good
job. Here, where he says, and this is Jesus talking, verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not.
Jesus. What are you talking about?
What prophets? We would never stone a prophet.
What are you talking about, man? Mm-hmm. What prophets did we stone or slay? What are you talking about? Right? Yeah. And now this is a criticism that E.D. Howe, author of Mormonism Unveiled, the great grandfather of anti-Mormonism, he levels this accusation at Joseph Smith, and he says, there's no prophets that were stoned or slain for preaching the Messiah. You're crazy. And I want to say, hey,
exactly.
Brother, Jesus said the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that record in the traditional canon. So a few of the books that I point out in my book, the apocryphal text that I mine, is what happened to Isaiah, Micah, Jeremiah, Habakkuk. What happened to all these guys?
They got killed.
And
Isaiah got sawed in half in those, which is crazy.
And you wouldn't know that from reading the traditional canon. You'd read some little poetry, some hint of a whisper, of a clue that maybe kind of sort of means the Messiah. In the Book of Mormon, wakes up and no, it's the Messiah. His name's Jesus. He'll be baptized in Jordan, and preaches these things loudly, clearly. And the Old Testament does not do that. It does not do that. So we have to ask ourselves, who's wrong? Mm-hmm. Who's wrong? Mm-hmm. And if the Book of Mormon is like your evangelical or your Protestant friend had the concern, if the Book of Mormon is wrong for preaching the Messiah so clearly, so early, then I want to ask him, why isn't the Old Testament preaching the most important thing in the history of anything?
Yeah.
Why isn't it explicit in the Old Testament? Mm-hmm. What went wrong? Mm-hmm. Jesus shows up in the meridian of time, and he gets killed by the keepers of the canon, by the Jews of Jerusalem.
And why?
And you think we're weird?
Mm-hmm. And one good question to ask is that Jesus wasn't rejected by everyone. So some people saw who he was, and it just happens to be that most of those people were in the northern kingdom. They were not, Jesus gathered people in the north away from Jerusalem where the authoritative elites were.
That's right.
And so I find it, and a lot of these texts are technically like northern, they're considered to be northern texts.
Dude, there's another sweet verse that is, you probably know of it, in Acts 7.
Okay.
51 and 52.
We're going to have to do a rewrite if he doesn't know it.
Yeah. Basically.
Let me bring it up and pretend like I know it.
Yeah. It says, Heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool. What house will ye build me, saith the Lord? Hath not my hands made all these things? Ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, ye do always resist the Holy Ghost, as your fathers did, so do ye. Which of the prophets have not your fathers persecuted? And they have slain them which showed before of the coming of the just one, of whom ye have been now the betrayers and murderers.
Oh, great.
That's hardcore.
It's so cash money.
Excellent.
You literally said,
Yeah.
which prophet that preached of the coming of the just one did you not
persecute?
But where are they?
Okay, marry this to another verse. Here's one of my favorite verses from
This is epic.
the Book of Mormon. Here's one of my favorite verses from the Book of Mormon. Abinadi, in I think it's Mosiah 13, could be, he says, there have not been prophets, save they have testified of the Messiah. So you have Peter, Jesus, Lehi, Abinadi, all of them saying prophets of old, pre-600 BC, prophesied of the Messiah and were killed. We don't have either of those things in the traditional canon. When did they persecute Isaiah? When did they persecute Micah?
Jeremiah.
Yeah, I mean Jeremiah was throwing in the stocks and things.
Yeah.
But like when did they persecute Moses? You know, and E.D. Howe, Mormonism Unveiled, he says, "Oh, Joseph's crazy. They didn't persecute messianic prophets, but Peter thinks they did. Jesus thinks they did. What were they reading that we don't have?" And so that's kind of hopefully will tempt people to think, "Oh, wait a minute." You know, can you go to Luke chapter 6, verse 24?
Yep, I got it right here.
Go to Luke chapter 6, verse 24.
Okay, while you're looking for that, can I just read the verses of Abinadi?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, so he's basically talking about the law and how it was given and stuff, but it says, "And now did they understand the law? I say unto you, nay, they did not all understand the law, and this because of the hardness of their hearts, for they understood not that there could not any man be saved except it were through the redemption of God. For behold, did not Moses prophesy unto them concerning the coming of the Messiah, and that God should redeem his people? Yea, and even all the prophets who have prophesied ever since the world began, have they not spoken more or less concerning these things?"
Concerning what? What are you smoking, Abinadi?
Concerning this, have they not said that God himself should come down among the children of men and take upon him the form of man and go forth in mighty power upon the face of the earth?
Who ever said that? Did Enoch say that? Did Noah say
that? And have they not said also that he should bring to pass the resurrection of the dead?
Yes.
And that he himself should be oppressed and afflicted?
There we go.
So we have it in the New Testament too. So you ask your pastor friend, you say, who's Jesus talking about?
Yeah, so Luke, what were you talking about?
Luke chapter 6, verse 24.
Okay.
Read that verse.
I got it. "But woe unto you that are rich, for ye have received your consolation."
Yeah. So this is Jesus talking to the elites of his day.
Yeah.
And he read it one more time. What does he say to them?
It says, "But woe unto you that are rich, for ye have received your consolation."
Okay, interesting. So that was Jesus riffing, right?
Yeah.
He's just riffing, right? He's just making up stuff, right? He's Jesus. He gets to do that.
By the tone of your voice, I think no.
Right. Well, that's what everybody thought until we discover the Ethiopic Book of Enoch. Okay. And guess what? Jesus is quoting the Book of Enoch.
Yeah.
He's quoting a text that nobody knew about.
Yeah.
Until, the
they all knew
century.
about it. They would have known.
They all knew about it. See, that's the key, is that Paul, Jude, John, Jesus, and Peter are referring to texts and prophecies that they all knew and we don't have.